The theme of this shir is the topic of Chinuch Bonim, bringing up children, educating children. What I'd like to do is to divide the shir into 5 different topics, not necessarily related, but each one, I hope, which will give some insight and perception into the topic of parenting, of children in the classroom, in any aspect of Chinuch Bonim. The first section will try and give a definition of what's included in Chinuch Bonim. What's the package? What's the responsibility? What does it include? The second theme is trying to show what one is up against when it comes to Chinuch Bonim, educating children. What are the problems involved? What are the issues and what are the pitfalls which one can come across as trying to bring up a child or dealing with children in the classroom. The third is to try and show you a code of practice which is right in front of you every day, and you might not have noticed just how much this code is right in front of you. You see it every day and you know the words, but you might not have realized that the Torah HaKadosh is telling us exactly what is needed in order to educate a child. The fourth topic we'll call as a catalyst, and the fifth topic we'll give a title of an elixir. Let's start with the first. One of the probably lesser known educators in America many years ago was Rushmore Weinerman. He was a Talmud of the Havas Hashem, and he came to America and he worked together with Rabbi Feinstein on the east side in Mesivta Tiferes Yerushalayim. He worked together with him. He actually was the one who wrote the Perush of the Havas Hashem on the Torah, but he was very instrumental in setting up Beis Yaakovs in schools, and his advice was sought in many different areas from many different states. He wrote an essay on Chinuch Bonim, and he explained that the responsibility of a parent with a child in the home, a teacher in the classroom, a madrich or madricha, a ganenet, whoever is involved in the next generation, the responsibility is to pass on every aspect and every detail which there is in the Masoress, in the tradition, down to the next generation. And that's the meaning of the words Torah tziva lanu Moshe moirosho kihilas Yaakov. The Torah, which we received from Moshe Rabbeinu, moirosho, really translated in English, is an heirloom. It's to be passed over. It's a treasure. It's something which is unique in Klal Yisrael, kihilas Yaakov, which is given over to the different communities in Klal Yisrael. But the point which he stressed is, it's really called a chut hazov, a golden thread. And perhaps we can look carefully at that choice of description. You take great care over gold. Something which is gold, you carefully protect it and make sure it doesn't get stained or blemished. It's gold. And the meaning of the word chut means it's a thread which must go from one generation to the next. And therefore, the responsibility of a parent is, or a teacher, whoever it is to pass down carefully, accurately, without any loops, anything missed out, from one generation to the next, everything that there is in Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu. If you'd like a bracket, and you'd like some sort of area of what we're talking about, the widest possible bracket I can think of is from gefilte fish to Kriyas Shema. In other words, from the most, you might think, the most mundane, the most menial, what the child eats in the house, gefilte fish, to being Mekabel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's that broad. What the child eats, that the child should know, this is Shabbos food, this is Yom Tov food, this is called Sudas Tisha B'Av, an egg with ashes, this is Hamantashen, Shabbos food. Everything is part of the Masoress, that the child should feel that This is special, this is unique for this time, and it's part of the Maseiras. And of course, until Kriya Shema is the statement of faith of Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's how broad it is. Nothing can be missed out. It's all inclusive. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, maybe we can look at the Baal Tanura at the introduction to Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos said, Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, Musar Yeshua, to the Zakenim, to the Nevi'im. And then, if you look at Pirkei Avos is talking really only about one topic, ethics and midas and conduct and doctrine. But surely, if you're saying Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, then where in Pirkei Avos is Hilchos Shabbos? Where are the laws of Pesach? Where are the laws of marriage, of damages, of money, of ribis, where are all the other laws? If you're talking about Moshe Kibbel Torah Misinai, why isn't Pirkei Avos talking about that as well? And yet it only talks about ethics and conduct and character improvement and personality. Asei l'chorav, im einan lili mili. These are all aspects of ethics. Surely the Mishnah is missing the main detail in the body of law. Answers the Baal Tanura, no one had any question at all that whether Shabbos or Yom Kippur or Pesach, Chometz or Sukkah, all these, of course they're from Sinai. Everybody knows that. But the Chiddush is, what is new, is that you didn't realize perhaps that even Im Eina Nili Mili comes from Sinai. That's the point. Asei L'chorav is from Sinai. That's also part of the heirloom. People are unaware, Ashlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omeid is also from Sinai. It's all from Sinai. Of course, Shabbos and Kashrus is from Sinai, but that's the point, and therefore everything is included from Sinai. And there you begin to realize the awesome responsibility of a mechanech, of a parent, of a teacher, of a madrich. Nothing can be missed out. Maybe we can take a little bit further. There's a beautiful he'ora of Rav Hirsch on the three sons of Noach, Shem, Cham, and Yofes. Says Rav Hirsch that the names of each of these nations which came out of Noach are symbolic of their music. Cham means the black people. Their music is Cham. If you've ever seen West Indian or black music, it's very hot. It's passionate. They jump up and down. It's full of life. Cham has Cham music. It's hot. Yofes, says Rav Hirsch, is Greece and Europe, the nations of Europe. Their music is Yafeh. Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, first movement, second movement, it's harmony, an interesting melody, it's Ma'od Yafeh. Says Rav Hirsch, but Klal Yisrael come from Shem. Shem is a name. A name is always a tachlis, a purpose. Jewish music is supposed to have a purpose to it, to lift one's spirits and to get closer to the Almighty. That's the purpose of Jewish music. What is the reason why we have the Levim in the Beis HaMikdash? As background music, as muzak, while the Kohanim were doing the Avodah? No way. The reason why there was music is because the purpose of the music was to lift the Kohanim, lift the Avodah up. Rabbi Yisrael Shklova, who was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, writes in the introduction to Pas HaShulchan that when the Vilna Gaon had completed his commentary on Shir HaShirim, he then made a Suda and explained to the Talmidim what does it mean, the greatness of Jewish music. It has a tachlis. It's supposed to bring you closer. It might well be Cham. It might well be Yafeh. But that's not the main point. Jewish music is supposed to lift you. That's also part of the Maseiras. A parent must sing Zmiras at the Shabbos table. The music, the food, the midas, the behavior. I have a friend actually who is a Levi, and he once told me that I know he has it as a Maseiras in his family, that the tradition that the tune that we sing with the Kohanim when they duchen in Birchas Kohanim, la 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 la. That comes from Sinai. That comes from the Beis Hamikdash. I'm sorry, from the Beis Hamikdash. That's how the Kohanim used to sing. Who knows if we knew the meaning behind the introduction to each perek in Tehillim, Lam Natseach, to the conductor, Al Hagitis, Al Shoshanim, Livnei Koyach. These are all the ways the music should be played. We don't have them. What a tragedy if we knew what the secret of the music is behind each perek in Tehillim. But this is the responsibility of an educator, Machanech. Just to give you an idea and an eye-opener, and what happens if you miss something out. The Gemara says in Yehonason that Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 Talmidim. No question. They knew all the Torah of Rabbi Akiva. Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Kashrus, Hilchos Shrita. They learned, they knew, they were great Talmidei Chachomim. And yet the Gemara says in Yehonason, Daf Samach Beis Amud Beis, V'kulan Meisu, Shelo Nagu Kovod Zeh Bozeh. It doesn't say that they, Rabbi Katla has a beautiful point, it does not say that they were mezalzel. No, but they didn't act with honor. They didn't abuse, but there wasn't enough honor. And for that they all died. How awesome, how overwhelming that is. They were missing an intrinsic part of the heirloom. And for that they all died, because they weren't able to pass on the heirloom as it really should have been, because without kovod you don't have Torah. That's how far it goes. The responsibility of a parent, of a teacher in Chinuch Bonim. Just as a last point, perhaps we can bring down the definition of Rav Hirsch in the Siddur. What does it mean by a woman she'osani kirtzoinai? She says those words, and Rav Hirsch mentions there were different mafarshim, but if I remember correctly, Rav Hirsch mentions that the meaning of she'osani kirtzoinai means that Hashem made me to have the role of a mechanech. A woman doesn't have to go to shul. A woman is not governed by mitzvahs aseh, which are governed by time. She doesn't have the responsibility of learning daf hayomi. She doesn't have those responsibilities. Why? So she's there for the children. And that's kirtzoina, the rotzoin Hashem, the will of the Almighty, is that a woman should be there in the home. That's a rough guideline, but enough to realize what does it mean from gefilte fish until Kriyas Shema. That's the extent of what we mean by chinuch. That's the package of chinuch. What are you up against? The second theme. What are the problems? It's really only one point, one theme. And that is that we are faced in our times especially with nothing less than something like a tsunami of secularism. It's like a tidal wave of secular values, secular standards, the importance of money, the way people dress, billboards, advertising, the world of movies, the world of commerce. It's like a tidal wave. It's almost overwhelming. And as much as a parent tries at the kitchen table or in the house to create an atmosphere of kedusha, of tznius, of Shabbos, outside it's a tidal wave. And that's perhaps one of the greatest problems we have facing us today in Chinuch Bonim. I'd like to give a mashal. A village by the coast. 100 families living by the sea, a quiet village by the sea. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and everybody's asleep. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the Coast Guard lets off the alarm and the whole village wakes up. The lights go on, everybody is woken up in the middle of the night. The Coast Guard goes around with a microphone around the streets and announcing to everybody, every single person in the village must climb up on the roof. We're expecting a tidal wave. I can see it coming, and there's no way you can protect yourself unless you climb on the roof. One smart guy maybe turns around and says, oh, close the door tight. It won't help. Maybe another family turns around and says, oh, well, climb under the blankets. Won't help. Nothing will help but that you climb up on the roof There's no other way to save yourself. Perhaps the nimshal is, in our times, there's no way that you can possibly save yourself from the tidal wave of secularism unless you climb up on the roof spiritually, that you have higher standards in the home or in the classroom. It can't be from the street. You must create an atmosphere, if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, higher, that the child is brought up not with levels of what he sees in the street or on the buses, on the trains, but he has what's called a higher level of existence. The Alter from Kelm once explained, wonderful question, how on earth did Yosef ever manage to resist Ashes Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar? How did he ever manage to resist her enticement? The woman every day, the Gemara brings down in Yuma, every day would dress differently, would say different things. It was almost impossible to resist the lady, says the Alter, because Yaakov Avinu had given Yosef, in our terms we would call it like an oxygen mask of spiritual values, so that wherever he was able to maintain his levels of Kedusha. That's how he managed. Otherwise he wouldn't have managed. He had what's called higher standards. And that's really what we have to do in our times. Otherwise it's almost impossible, because the standards are so low and the impact is so great on a child. He must be given what's called a higher level. And that's what we're going to come on to in a minute. Higher levels of behavior, higher levels of conversation, higher levels of personal modesty, higher levels of what to do with money, the importance of money, what is money. It must be given a spiritual plateau much higher than what the street gives. And then the parent can survive, because otherwise it's a tidal wave. Several years ago, I was talking with the Rosh Yeshiva of Or Sameach, Rabbi Mendel Weinbach, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, and he suggested a program. It didn't work out in the end, but this is what the discussions were about, for high school boys from England, that they're not yeshiva bochurim. They will go to university after a year, but to bring them to Or Sameach for a year's program. And give them some taste of Torah, and then one can't expect more. They'll go back to university, but at least that they have a one-year program in Or Sameach in Yerushalayim. And what Reb Mendel said to me, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, was an alarming point. And this is how he introduced the program. It didn't work in the end, but this was the point which he was aware of. He said, you have to be aware that it could be that during the day the boys will have nothing but a pure thrill from learning. They'll enjoy a Gemara, they'll enjoy a Kasha of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, you'll give them a Tosfos, you'll explain a halacha to them, they'll be thrilled, they'll enjoy it very much. But you have to be aware that after the day is finished, they'll go in their rooms, close the door, and open up the laptop. So in other words, what happens is, and you can't stop it, because they're not in the yeshiva, they're not yeshiva bochurim, he was aware of that. He had such insight. You can't take away their laptops and their iPods, whatever they have. So in the morning they'll be in the Beis HaMedrash, and in the evening they'll be on 42nd Street in New York. Now, how can you stop that? What are you going to do about it? And that's the problem. That's the tidal wave. So how can you create anything? How can you do anything? I'm very fortunate to have a connection with the Novominsker Rebbe, Shia Bari, in New York, and I was once sitting at this table on Shabbos, and in the middle of the Shabbos Suda on Shabbos morning, it was almost as if the Rebbe went into a trance. I was sitting there with his wife, and someone else was sitting at the table, and he just wasn't there with us. He wasn't listening to what we were saying. We just sat there, waited, and then he turned around and said, the most alarming comment, he said, and only the Ribbono Shel Olam can take us out of this problem. And I didn't know what he meant. No one meant me what he meant, and I asked him, what does the Rebbe mean? So he said to me, with great pain, you could see he was broken. He said, in the last, if I remember correctly, he said in the last 2 months, we had to close down 3 yeshivas in the New York area because it was impossible. The bochurim wouldn't listen, and at night they went into the laptops, and it wasn't a yeshiva, and therefore the yeshiva had to close down. 3. That's what it means. And it's a tidal wave. You're trying to create standards of Kedusha. Moi Rosha Kehillas Yaakov. This is what one's up against. But Pinchas put it in a beautiful way. He said, it used to be that the Rishus HaRabim was the Rishus HaRabim and the Rishus HaYochid is the Rishus HaYochid, but not anymore. What has now happened is that everything in the Rishus HaRabim has come into the Rishus HaYochid. That's where the problem is. Reb Simcha Wasserman, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, explained the problem in a different way. Maybe we should just explain who Reb Simcha was. Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, the son of Reb Yehonason, who I don't think there was anybody in the world who saw the difference of these two worlds so greatly. Reb Simcha was the son of Reb Yehonason. He sat at the feet of the Chofetz Chaim. We went with his father, no doubt. He heard Reb Yerucham in the Mir, Reb Baruch Ber in Kamenetz. He was in the world of yeshivas fully, totally, himself and from his family. And yet he lived in Strasbourg, traveled to Detroit, and he was a major influence in Torah in California. You even say, I remember once reading that he taught himself how to fly a plane, and he used to fly around North and South California in a plane, visiting all the homesteads where there were Yidden there who were lost to the cause completely, and used to be Makarev them, and that was Reb Simcha Wasserman. He described the problem with the following way. It used to be that the Goy was a poritz. A poritz means in the shtetl he was a bully, but now he's become a buddy, and that's the problem. From a bully to a buddy. He puts your arm around you in university. He's working together in the office in Manhattan. He's a nice person, and you eat out with him, and that's where it all starts. The assimilation starts, and he's no longer a bully anymore. He's an attractive buddy. Takes you to a ball game, goes to a movie with you, and things develop, and things get out of control, and that's the problem. It's a tidal wave. It's a little bit like Yaakov Avinu said when he was worried about Esav. Hatzileni no miyad ochi miyad Esav. If he comes to me as Esav, then I know who we're dealing with. If he comes to me as ochi, and he comes and puts his arm around me, then I have a problem. How do I push him away? And that's the point. That's the point. It's a tidal wave. It's very difficult. One has to climb up on the roof, in spiritual terms. And I'd like to show you in the 3rd section, with a code of practice, what do we mean by a code of practice by climbing up on the roof. Every day, twice a day, we say Kriyas Shema. And one reads this as Oil Malchus Shamayim, accepting upon himself a testimony, Hashem Echad, but there's something perhaps in this paragraph which is staring us in the face as a code of practice how to educate a child. Here's the first line. Shema Yisrael, Rashi says the word Shema means to accept upon yourself. Hashem, he was, he is, and he will be. Adon HaKol, the master. Elokeinu, the mashgiach, the supervisor, the provider, the manager, the overseer. Elokeinu, he is our God, and he is Echad, above, below, and in all 4 directions. That is a statement of absolute faith. Hashem Echad. First line said every single day. The next line in the Torah, let's miss out Baruch Shem, it's not in the Torah. The Gemara explains why that line is doing there, but let's go on to the next line in the Torah. There's a Vav here. And the Vav joins up from Echad to Ve'ohavto. Ve'ohavto es Hashem Elokecha. B'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol mi'odecha. The first line is a statement of absolute faith, Hashem Echad. But it doesn't stop there. One has to aspire and reach to something called a passion, an emotional connection, a love with all your heart, says Rashi, with your good side, your bad side. V'chol nafshecha is an aspect of sacrifice. It doesn't mean just giving up your life. Any act of sacrifice, of Mesiras Nefesh, is b'chol nafshecha. Not necessarily giving up one's life. One can be mekayim the mitzvah b'chol nafshecha. Just one is sacrifice for Torah. U'b'chol moedecha, with all your money, one is driven with a passion to relate to Hashem. So the belief itself is not enough. A university professor of theology might well have a standard of believing in one God. Monotheism. He believes in one God. But that's not enough. That's not the whole point. There's a second clause, which is Havas Hashem. And that's still not enough, says Rashi. How do you show the Ahava? V'hoyu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavocha hayoim al levavecha. This refers to the Dvarim ha'ele, refers to Torah. In other words, the second line can mean that the person says, I love Shabbos, I love Purim, I love Sukkot, I love going to a chasna, I love Jewish food, I love all the things. That's maybe Ahava, with a passion. But that's not the whole thing. It's not enough to have an armchair theory or an emotional connection. It has to go into Torah. On the heart. Meaning, it must be felt deep down and realized. The question you might ask, why isn't Torah al machshavosecha, on your mind? Why does it say al levavecha, on your heart? Because the acquisition of Torah must become so personal and so intimate and so cherished that you treasure every aspect of Torah that you've learned. Now those three lines, the first line, Hashem Echad, the faith, the second is Havas Hashem, and the third is Havas HaTorah, perhaps we can suggest is the whole introduction to Chinuch Bonim. The reason why I'm saying that is because nowhere in the whole of the Torah does it have the mitzvah of Chinuch Bonim but the next verse. The next verse is the only place in the Torah where you have what's called Chinuch Bonim. There are other psukim, Higadat Levincha B'Yamahu, which is Leil HaSeder, but the source of educating a child is after these three verses. V'shinantom levonecha v'dibarto bom. V'shivtecha b'veisecha u'belechtecha b'derech u'v'shochtacha u'v'kumecha. That is the source of Chinuch Bonim. The question we must ask is, what is it doing there? And perhaps this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu meant. In order to become a mechanech, in order to become a parent, in order to become a teacher, any responsibility in chinuch, you need to have in your mindset the belief, Hashem Echad, the Ahava, and the love of Torah. And then go ahead. You'll do a wonderful job. You might not be at the peak level. Most of us aren't. There's always room for growth. Always. But you're, as they say, in work in progress. But the point is that once you have these three, you're already equipped. You don't need a degree in education to be a teacher, to be a parent. Maybe you need skills of education, but in order to do the job of Chinuch Bonim, especially as a parent, most of all what you need is these three. And that's what the Torah is showing us here. Emunah, Havas Hashem, Havas HaTorah, and now go ahead. You'll do a wonderful job. You might turn around and say your parents did a hopeless job with you. You're not happy the way your parents educated you. It's nothing to do with it. It's each person has to strive for these three, and then go ahead. V'shinantom v'dibartom. But we must be a little bit more specific here. The Torah gives two words when talking to children. There's something called shinun and there's something called dibur. Shinantom levonecha v'dibarto bom. Rashi explains the difference. Shinun means accuracy. The child must be taught clearly. This is osa, this is mutter. This is chayev, this is potter. This is kosher, this is treif. That's called shinun. And I would suggest it's perhaps mostly done in the classroom. Real accuracy that the child knows. Beis Shammai says this, Beis Hillel says that, Abaye says this, Rava says that. That's called shinun. I don't think a mother has involved in that, and I don't think it's anywhere else but really in a classroom. That's called shinun. V'dibarto bom means schmoozing, talking in Torah. Where and when? When the children are eating their cereal in the morning. You're taking them to school, you're going on a trip. A bedtime story. When they get up in the morning. It's called being a wise, clever parent or teacher. There are two sides to it. The classroom side is shinun, but then there's something called shmuzing v'dibarto, talking in Torah. We don't need Alice in Wonderland. We don't need Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We don't need all the songs about Humpty Dumpty and... we don't need all that. We have Torah. And Torah itself should be the form of conversation. Not in a testing way, but in a schmoozing way. A story, a joke, a song, an incident, but it's all Torah. V'dibarto bom, and that's where the clever parent comes in, and the clever mother. She talks Torah, but she's all the time giving over a message. I would like to give two examples. One I heard myself, and one I thought about. I don't know who the Rosh Hashiva was, but he was walking in Bnei Brak with a Talmud after Pesach one year. And they came across a garden. And in the garden, walking down one of the streets, I don't know where it was, but this is what I heard, the Maisa that had happened. There was a magnificent tree in a garden with a beautiful foliage. Trees and a leaf, and it was a beautiful tree. Under the tree, a child was playing with a ball. The Rosh Hashiva went over to the child and said to the child, with the Talmud next to him, and this is how the story got out. Rosh Hashiva said to the child, how many leaves are there on the tree? The child says, I have no idea how many leaves on the tree. Have a guess. The child said, millions, million leaves. Then the Rosh Hashiva turned around and said to the child, have you ever seen leaves bigger than this? He says, yeah, sure. Ever seen leaves smaller than this? Yes, I have. Have you ever seen leaves with a different type of green? And he went on like this with different questions about the leaves on the tree. It was something to see. And then the Rosh Hashiva was quiet. And there was a moment of silence. And then the child turned round and said, Rabbi, ata yodea, ani ohev Hashem. I love Hashem. Who mentioned Hashem? Who brought him into the conversation? But that's called the cleverness and the insight of Chinuch.